Hello and welcome to WMT Reviews. I am Wiseman Danofsky. Now, when I was growing up, three distinct elements contributed to shaping the person I would become later in life. One was the movie Big, starring Tom Hanks, the story of a small boy who has his wish to be big granted, becoming a child in a man's body, existing in a world of adults, but functioning and acting with the imagination and wonder of a child. Another was the movie Toy Story, or more specifically Toy Story 2, a film which fundamentally changed the way I looked at my possessions. I was scarred by Jessie's song, I was terrified by the idea of losing a toy I loved at a car boot sale. It made everything I owned mean the world to me. The final element was Robin Williams. Just Robin Williams. Every film I saw with him filled me with a deep-seated joy. I revelled in his apparent love for life and his joy of bringing laughter to others. He put his heart and soul into every role he took on, and every character he played leapt off the screen, and so many times his performance and his delivery left me in fits of laughter. From the very first moment I witnessed him on screen, I knew that was the man I wanted to be when I grew up. Playful, energetic, I wanted to enjoy the same thrill of bringing laughter to people wherever I went. And it's fair to say that I would not be who I am today were it not for Robin Williams. So as you can well imagine, the news of his tragic death this week broke my heart. It took a long time for it to truly sink in. I can't remember how many times I listened to the news story before finally accepting it as truth. One of the greatest icons of my childhood, one of my singular icons, was gone, and the world was a little less fun for it. His death was a cold reminder to me that sometimes the funniest people are the most tortured, fighting an endless inner battle and letting nothing on to the outside world. And so in honour of one of my favourite actors of all time, today I'm going to review one of my personal favourite films from his impressive resume. And that film might surprise you, unless you read the title of the video, being Mrs. Doubtfire, a film which, when compared to some of his other work, is less favoured by viewers and critics alike, but holds a special place in my heart and always will. Why? Well, let's jump straight into this review and I'll tell you. Our story begins in San Francisco, where our main character, Daniel Hillard, portrayed of course by Robin Williams, is at work as a talented voice actor at an animation studio. This opening will stay with me for my entire life. Shortly before I saw this film for the first time, I watched Tim Burton's A Nightmare Before Christmas and I fell in love with animation. And this film gave me my first glimpse into how voice actors' performances were put to the pictures. Of course, it's completely inaccurate, being that the voices are recorded first and the images created later, but that didn't matter to me at the time. As a father, Hillard is concerned about the pro-smoking message the cartoon appears to be sending to its young viewers, and following a clash with his boss on the subject, loses his job. We're introduced in the next scene to Daniel's three children, eldest Lydia, played by Lisa Jacob, middle son Chris, played by Matthew Lawrence, and youngest daughter Natalie, played by Matilda star Mara Wilson, who even I have to admit is an incredible actress in this film. I really do have to give credit to the young Wilson's acting here. It's one of my favourites of her performances. The kids return home to find their father is throwing a surprise birthday party for Chris at the house, in spite of his poor report card, which their mother Miranda, played by Sally Field, has expressly forbidden. But Daniel goes ahead with it anyway, assuring the kids that she'll never know. This opening clearly establishes the stark difference in parenting techniques of this couple. Miranda is clearly the authority figure when it comes to discipline and keeping order in the household, whereas Daniel comes across as the fun-loving and reckless one, who wants to be more of a friend than a parent to the kids. Growing up myself, I knew this feeling all too well, although it was reversed in my case, but it was an easily relatable family unit. Daniel is clearly crazy about his kids. But something I never really liked was we never saw that kind of relationship between Miranda and the kids at this point in the movie, creating an almost unfair contrast between the two and making her out to be the big stressy bad guy of the family, which, of course, she isn't. She's just at work, which, until he was fired, was exactly what Daniel was doing too. Miranda comes home from a stressful day at work as a graphics designer to find the party still in full swing and her man-child husband literally dancing on the table. The row that ensues is pretty intense, especially when you consider that the kids are merely in the next room and can hear every word. Another position I've been in at a young age, and I can tell you those facial expressions are as spot on as you can get to the feelings that go through you. The argument ends with Miranda demanding a divorce. And in their first custody hearing, due to his lack of a stable home or employment, full custody is awarded to Miranda, which naturally breaks Daniel's heart. William's physical performance in these court scenes is great. You can really feel what he's going through as someone who has nothing to do with his family sits above him and decides their future. Daniel soon gets himself a small cupboard of an apartment and begins to look for a job, leading to one of my favourite scenes in the movie, where a classically enthusiastic Williams unleashes a barrage of hilarious impressions and voices to an incredibly disinterested job-seeking assistant named Mrs. Selner, played by Anne Haney. And my god, does this woman get some serious points from me. I can't imagine how hard it must have been to sit there blank-faced and indifferent while Robin freaking Williams sits in front of you and RPGs comedy gold straight into your face. If it were me, from the very moment he let out that first yes, I would have said, nope, can't do it. Get that broom handle over there and put a wig on it. I'll be in the back wetting myself laughing. While Daniel does find employment packing and shipping film at a television studio, he soon learns that Miranda is looking for a housekeeper to watch the children after they get in from school while she's at work. Daniel offers to watch the kids in order to spend more time with them, but Miranda won't have it. I still don't understand this at all. On the outside, she makes out that she wanted this separation to be as painless as possible, yet she turns her nose up at this frankly ideal setup, which both Daniel and the kids are completely behind. Another reason I dislike this scene is largely due to its setup. Miranda arrives early to pick up the children from their time with their father, due to a long list of errands she supposedly needs to run. My problem is, why not run the errands first, rather than taking the kids away from their father early to have them sit in the car? Also, this scene takes place rather late in the evening. I don't really think the bank would still be open. The market maybe, but not the bank or the newspaper office. After sabotaging Miranda's advertisement with a false number, Daniel proceeds to call her repeatedly using a long stream of hilarious voices to disguise himself as various unsuitable nannies. This, of course, is to make his final caller seem all the more perfect. And after nailing the telephone interview, he arranges to meet the family as his new character, Mrs. Euphigenia Doubtfire. Now, the usual criticism of this character is the accent. Williams uses a mixed Scottish accent for a character he later describes as being English. But if memory serves, he also covers this very cleverly by saying Mrs. Doubtfire has travelled around a lot, and has as such picked up a very jumbled accent. So for me, the accent never bothered me. I just thought it was cute. Daniel's brother Frank and his partner Jack use their makeup artist skills to transform him into the character and complete the illusion. Frank is played by that ear-sore Harvey Fierstein, and remains to this day to be the only part of this movie I really cannot stand. I despise that guy's voice. The cover works and Miranda hires Mrs. Doubtfire as their nanny, and almost immediately begins to open up to her new housekeeper in private conversation, as though she's known her for years. Funny that. They discuss how Miranda is coping with the divorce and also why she decided to go through with it in the first place. This is a unique opportunity for Daniel's character here to learn from his mistakes by having them be recited directly to his face without the background noise of an argument to distract him. And as such, Daniel develops the Doubtfire character into the stern authority figure he could never be before as the children's parent. Though initially rejected by the older two of the three kids, over time they begin to warm to her and she becomes an indispensable part of the family. The time spent in the role also allows Daniel to develop his own life skills, learning to cook and look after himself, but not before a hilarious scene with Mrs. Selner, who comes to inspect the apartment, stumbling onto the Mrs. Doubtfire persona, who Daniel quickly covers as being his sister. I always had a slight problem with this scene because the Doubtfire face mask is destroyed in the confusion, but luckily Daniel's brother just happened to make a completely identical spare. Not only is that wildly convenient, not to mention meaning I get subjected to that voice again, but it also kinda makes the previous scene a little pointless, or at least takes away the drama of the fact the mask was destroyed in the first place. I think I would have preferred it if he had to wait for the new one to be made and maybe called in sick, even if it was a short-cut scene no longer than this one. Daniel soon encounters a hiccup in his plan. His performance as Mrs. Doubtfire has been so perfect up till now that even in spite of all the improvements he's made to his real life, Miranda will not let him take over care of the children for fear of losing Doubtfire. Not to mention the sudden introduction of a new love interest in Miranda's life in the form of Stuart, played by Brosnan, a rich, successful businessman with his eyes firmly set on moving into Daniel's place in the family. These two play off each other perfectly. Anyone who's been subjected to the new boyfriend knows this feeling of needing to appear mature and polite in front of your ex-partner, and in this case, the kids. But behind those gritted teeth, the words, "Get your hands off my family," desperately beg to be yelled, and Williams portrays this perfectly. It's around this time that Lydia and Chris accidentally discover the truth of Mrs. Doubtfire's identity, and while initially taken aback, they're simply happy to still have their father playing an active role in their lives, and so agree to keep it a secret, both from Miranda and from Natalie, for fear she will accidentally blow their cover. This leads to another great scene, in which the rivalry between Doubtfire and Stewart culminates in a day trip to a public swimming pool, and following a few witty and snarky remarks exchanged between the two, Stewart lets his intentions to move in on the family known to a friend at the bar, while also expressing his disdain for Daniel. All while Daniel eavesdrops from nearby, lobbing a fruit at the back of his head in revenge. I love the expression on both their faces in this scene. Williams has a face that says, "Oh crap, I didn't think this through past the lobbing of the fruit," and quickly has to muster a cover story, while Brosnan's expression shows that he blatantly knows it was Mrs. Doubtfire who threw the fruit, but now finds himself in the same position Daniel was in when they first met, of having to sit on his fury in order to appear mature and not be seen to be assaulting an elderly lady. Revenge is sweet indeed. In a following scene, we see the CEO of the television station that Daniel works at quietly observing Daniel playing with some dinosaur figures, acting out a more child-friendly interpretation of an educational dinosaur show they were both criticising in an earlier scene. Mr. Lundy is so impressed with Daniel's performance that he makes an appointment to hear more of his ideas in a private dinner meeting at Bridges' restaurant. Only problem is, in the following scene, Miranda invites Mrs. Doubtfire to her birthday dinner at the exact same restaurant, at the exact same time, on the exact same night. Unable to turn down the offer and unable to reschedule his meeting with Lundy, Daniel resolves to attend both engagements as both Daniel and Doubtfire. The scene at the restaurant is absolutely genius. The number of times Daniel has to find a reason to excuse himself and return to the other table. The manner in which he does it, it's all brilliant. Everything from taking Doubtfire's medication to reattaching dentures, running into a supposed old girlfriend on the way back to the bathroom. The thing I love about this scene is he has to go from one table as a respectable British nanny to another table shotting whiskey, grinning inanely while perving on waitresses. The sheer contrast of the two performances is mind-boggling, and Williams really gets a chance to show off in this scene, and show off he does. Now there is a moment that I still disagree with here, however. After the alcohol from both tables begins to take effect, Daniel spitefully laces Stewart's dinner with pepper, to which he had previously stated he is allergic, which of course leads to the big dramatic unmasking scene. My problem is, sure he hates this guy, but would he really go that far? Would anyone? Without knowing the exact allergic reaction, would anyone really do that to a guy whose only real crime is being a bit of a pretentious rich boy? Stewart's not a stereotypical villain. In fact, I'd go so far as to say he's not a villain at all. He's just the new guy. Sure, as I've said, he's a bit of a dick, but he's not just getting with Miranda to spite Daniel. In fact, I'm not even sure the two have even met at this point. He's doing it because I genuinely believe he likes Miranda. He's already said he loves the kids. He's not trying to milk an inheritance or rob the house or pull off any kind of scheme to which Miranda is just a means to an end. So this bit never really sat right with me. So Daniel accidentally outs himself as Mrs. Doubtfire, first to Lundy when he forgets to remove the costume after spiking Stewart's dinner, to which he quickly covers by saying she's the host of the new show, but then is outed to the family when Stewart begins to choke on the pepper and Doubtfire rushes to the rescue, performing the Heimlich, saving his life but unmasking in the process. Even though I don't really like Sally Field's character in this film, I have to say her reaction to the unmasking is brilliant. I still love the "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god," followed by the whole time, it's just fantastic. His plan foiled, the court finds in favour of Miranda and awards sole custody of the children to her, in spite of a truly heartwarming speech given by Daniel, in which he lays his heart and soul out on the line. Everything he did just to be with his children. My personal favourite line is, "I'm addicted to my children, sir. I love them with all my heart, and the idea of someone telling me I can't be with them, I can't see them every day, is like someone saying, I can't have air, I can't live without air, and I can't live without them." Even now I have to choke back the man tears on that line. So while the character of Mrs. Doubtfire lives on in her television series, Miranda and the kids all admit to missing something about the lady that never was. And both Daniel's speech in the court and seeing the children's reaction to her appearance on the show convinced Miranda to give Daniel another chance with the children, taking on the role that he held as Doubtfire but doing it as himself. This is the perfect end to the story, really. I don't think I would have liked the film half as much if she turned around at this point and said, "Let's get back together." The fact that she gives him this chance at all is the right ending to me. Because let's face it, if your partner put you through this kind of ordeal, the idea of getting back with him just because, he did it for the kids, I can see the same passion he had when we first got together all over again. Yeah, it seems a bit far-fetched, don't you think? So Mrs. Doubtfire gives us our closing monologue and the message of the film when a little girl seemingly writes into the show about her parents divorcing and her fear of losing her family. To which Doubtfire says just because they don't love each other anymore doesn't mean they don't love you. That sometimes people need to be away from one another in order to become better people and better parents for their children, and that none of this is the child's fault. That love forms the ties that bind, and as long as love is there, you'll always have a family in your heart. So that was Mrs. Doubtfire, a film which I loved as a child and holds a special place in my heart to this day. The performances are genuine, the characters are believable and easy to form bonds with, and the comedy both complements and breaks up the drama of what is essentially a film about the stresses and damages of divorce on the family unit, both to the children and the parents. And while some may think that the idea of dressing up and pretending to be an elderly nanny to spend time with your children for a few more hours a week seems a bit far-fetched, I know plenty of people who would do anything to spend time with their children, to even have the illusion of still being a family. Even the child actors, something I complain about a lot when it comes to film, are some of the best I've ever seen. The way they portray their sheer emotion of what they're going through, trying to hold their family together while getting shipped back and forth between mother and father, constantly in the middle of their spats, incredible performances all around. Now, no film is perfect, and this one is no exception. There are still moments in the film that I don't like, and I've highlighted them as we've gone through. The main problem I wanted to come back to was the villainisation of both Miranda and Stuart. Miranda is played out from the start to be the one who breaks up the family by calling for the divorce in the first place. And even though we do get a scene with Doubtfire early in the film where Miranda says she didn't like who she was when she was with Daniel, always having to be the responsible one and feeling like she was looking after the whole family alone, there weren't enough moments like this to redeem how she comes across in the early moments of the film, especially in the argument scenes. Stuart is not the bad guy either. From what I can tell, he's got no sinister motives for moving on in the family, he just wants to support Miranda through a tough time. And it's simply because that puts him in the way of Daniel's dream scenario of getting the family back together that he's played out to be the villain. When really, as the message of the film clearly states, there are no villains in divorce, there's no bad guy, it's no one's fault. While I may have loved this film as a child, it strikes much more of a personal chord with me now that I'm older. My parents may not have been married when they separated, but it was just as hard to get through. Sometimes I look back on things that were said when it happened and in the immediate aftermath, and it still hurts. Hell, it probably always will. But I know that it's already had a massive positive effect on one of my parents, and there's always the hope that one day the same feeling will come to the other. But in the meantime, the love is still there, and so as Mrs. Doubtfire said, the family still lives on in my heart. This film is incredible. I know it has its naysayers, but I defy them. I throw a small nondescript fruit at the back of their heads and I spike their dinner with pepper. Okay, maybe not that bit. But I will award Mrs. Doubtfire a strong 8.5 on the Orsometer. It's my favourite Robin Williams film, its message holds a very important place in my life, and it always will. I've been Wiseman Tanofsky, this has been WMT Reviews, thank you very much for listening.